when Mr. Morgan called me and asked me did I want to speak, and the title was Why Women Must Rule the World, I went, eee, women don't use the word rule. That's reason number one why we should help lead the world. I say that because language matters. In the beginning, there was the word, and I don't use that for any other reason because word is creative. Word determines how we see the world, and women use different words. My guys want to have a war room anytime there's a problem. I even catch myself, taking things down the field with the soldiers ready to go to the energy revolution. And when I step back, though, and listen to language of women, you'll hear a lot of we. Have you ever considered, did you think about, and language is important, so women don't rule, women lead. Number two, I'm not going to read to you, and we've already heard there's just not enough of us. In Jamaica, the statistics I have here show that more than 60 CEOs, 9 women. You've already heard the statistics. There's the same internationally. On private boards, 16 or 17% now, 33 or 34%. We know parliaments throughout the world. We're underrepresented everywhere. And that, even though we make up 60% of the workforce. And as you all know, I hope that we have made great progress because now for this same job, we get paid 82%. Clap ourselves up, come on. But the good news and the bad news is that we have seen a plateau over the past 5 years. Women have made it to 60%. We've seen these numbers and they're not growing. So in all of the world, we need a balance. And I don't apologize at JPS for doing some gender rebalancing. And that's what I call it. I've hired some phenomenal women, and I had some phenomenal women that I had to find in the organization and let them have a leadership role. But I think just the fact that there's not enough of us, simply put, means there needs to be more. Reason number 3, because we can. Women make great leaders. 2 books that I'm really fond of. Execution, The Art of Getting Things Done, talks about what is the premier characteristic of a leader. And the first thing is know thyself. Be reflective and introspective, because you can't know your team or know anybody in the relationship way that we know we need to build trust and have superior organizations if you can't know yourself. And a lot of the reflection, skill, and talent I see in women. The statistics show that organizations that are led by women perform better financially. But more than that, that we see that the characteristics, if you want to talk about built to last, this idea of having different voices, being able to listen, are characteristics that we often see in women. Number 4, I really want to talk about this. Because we historically, in so many 100 years, have defined strength and power in such a different way. In a way that does bring up the picture of weapons really ready to go. And I think what I see in my life and my 25 years in business is the fact that women help redefine it. Not just for the women, but for the men. And I've heard a lot of stories about the men who say, Kelly, I can't be vulnerable. You say you want me to be, but not really. You'd rather see me die on that white horse than to fall off of it. And I don't know if there's some truth to that, ladies, but I think we have to examine it. Because if we're going to redefine strength and power, we have to redefine it for all of us. I am in love with a new author called Brené Brown. She talks about daring greatly, and she took that book from Ted Roosevelt, and she talks about the great dare is the dare to be vulnerable, to let people really see who you are. And I see organizations and associations being moved more by our ability to connect and let you see my weakness and let you know that I don't know and let you know how deeply I care. Next slide. Who is this woman? Thank you, Ambassador. This is Antoinette Tuff. She should be on every magazine cover because she is the epitome of strength. She was the woman in Atlanta, a bookkeeper who was the face of courage when an armed gunman walked into a school ready to take out another school. What did she do? She didn't pull out her weapon. She said, come on, baby. I love you. Everybody's had a bad time of life. You're having a bad time. We're not going to hate you, baby. And she performed a miracle. That's courage. That's strength. And that's the kind of courage and strength this world is begging for now. Next slide. I've already alluded to it, but I could spend a day talking about this. And this conference really is a week, not a couple of hours. But more voices will be heard. Historically, there's so few of us that have a mic. So few. And what I see and what research shows is that women will listen to varied sources. Experts, yes, but non-experts. The man on the street, whoever has an opinion. And that we are willing to step back and say, today, I'm not CEO. And I use a lot of different examples. I said, when you go into the hospital and you have a broken leg, who's CEO? You know? And then when I go to a steam turbine and we want somebody to be in charge, who's in charge? Not me. There's lots of times that leaders know to back up and to not be afraid to back up. I always say, I already got the job. I don't have to prove it every day. But to some of your comments about the cattiness of women, we can't let our insecurities make us prove it every day. But historically, women search out and allow more voices to be heard. And that's the job of every leader, for wherever you are, the embattled, the impoverished, whoever you are, for us to give voice to more voices. Number 6. And I love this one, because I believe if more women have leadership roles, our families, our communities, and our countries will be stronger. And I will admit, I had children rather late. I have an 8-year-old. And I will tell you that I was a different leader after I had children. And there's a couple of men in here, at least one, who knew me before I did. And I wasn't so nice when people were late. And I have my director of HR. Sometimes I'm still not so nice. But I will say that I have learned how important it is to get the real juice from everybody. And sometimes, guess what? I have to get the children out of the floor of JPS and give them a homework room. I have to let my stars come in a little different. Maybe I have to let them go pick up their kids because I need their talent and I need them 100%. And I know that when leaders in charge, I laughed when I walked in. When I first came to Jamaica, I wasn't the most obvious choice. And I heard a couple people say, thank God she's a woman. And I knew what that meant. And I've listened to women cry about the stories of having to make really hard choices. And I'm not saying that sometimes your career has to be on hold. It just does. Because the requirement of the job is 24 hours. Requirement of the job is something you're just not willing to give. And I always talk about, remember, it's not a ladder. It's a jungle gym from her Sandberg's book. So let's all remember that. But I believe that when women have their fair share of leadership, our families will be stronger, our children will be stronger, our countries will be stronger. Number 7. This is my favorite. I think women have the capacity to let whole people come to work. And I remember being at a CEO conference, and this woman was just breaking down crying. And I said, what's wrong? She said, by the time I leave my office till I pick up my kids, I have to take up so much armor, there's no more room in my car for it. And I could feel the pain because so many of us are walking around pretending to be something we're not. And I won't tell on my staff, but a couple of times, for instance, there was a real time for my staff to connect. Say that somebody's talking about somebody who was barefoot and living by candlelight, and I know that some people on my team live that way. And I'm ready for them to connect. And in our world, sometimes we hide because we don't want to expose who we are, because we want to be tough. We want to be something that's invincible. So what I want to talk about is bringing whole people. And I'll give you an example. I think we need leaders to feel more deeply. And I'll never forget, and my team knows this, if I'm doing a foundation talk or I'm at a school, we all know something. Kelly's going to cry. Kelly's going to cry. And sometimes in my board meetings I'm about to cry, but that's a whole other kind of crying. But you know what? Here's what I'll say. If people aren't crying, I want to know why. I want to know why. Because we should feel so desperate to make a difference, so touched by what we see, that there's no way we couldn't cry. I'll never forget this. We had such a great leader, and we were sitting around a room, and somebody else knows this story, and we were talking about this woman should be promoted. Brilliant woman. She laughs too much. She laughs too much. She laughs too much. We're all buttoned up. We can't laugh, we can't cry, but there's one emotion. I gave it away. That's okay, right? Anger. That's okay. Now, that's kind of allowed. But I think when we let whole people come to work and we let the emotions come, we will make different decisions. We'll make holistic decisions, and the world will be a better place. Not just our companies, but the world. And above all, it's just our turn. You know, there's a thing in law that says res ist loquitur, and it means the thing speaks for itself. And if you look around, look at the paper, look on TV, look at a number of different examples, and the fact is we all can agree that the brand of leadership and conflict resolution that we're currently using isn't serving us so well. And I don't read much, but I want to read this. Women can and should bring a new paradigm to leadership, develop their full potential, be true to themselves, to their unique creative nature, and to their most enlightened, nourishing power, which is much needed at the table, and society as a whole will be the beneficiary. And then I know that some of you know Sheryl Sandberg, and I don't want to go over a book. But I want to encourage us as I get off, real quick. Women, I've seen this, and a lot of the women in this room have heard me talk about Marianne Williamson's poetry. It's not our darkness we're afraid of, right? It's our light. Who am I to be brilliant, beautiful? And the poem goes, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. And it goes on to say, when you liberate yourself and you stand up in the full glory and power of who you are, you let everybody else do it. And I love that poem. But I want to just get that. They don't want to hear the JPS story, but there's a really good one real quick. When you have more women, our customer satisfaction is doubled, our employee engagement rate is doubled in 1 year. Okay. And I have great women. They're all over here. They're great. But I couldn't walk out here without saying I love that poem, and it means so much to me. And I say it so much. So don't shrink. But the second part is don't puff up. Don't puff up. I know the real shame trigger for me is when somebody says something about me not being at some mother function. And I feel bad. And there's a tendency of me when I'm at PTO to kind of shrink. Oh, I'm so embarrassed I wasn't there. Then I go, well, I had really important stuff to do. How did your bake sale go kind of thing. And this idea is don't shrink and don't puff up, but just stand on your holy ground. And that's a real balance, because we have a tendency in our insecurity to do one of those things, to shrink or puff up, but just stand on our holy ground, because if we puff up, we get to the same space we are today. And I'll leave you with one of my poems about power and language, because I believe you can use these two words in corporate America, in our institutions, these two words together in a sentence, and it won't hurt anybody. Power and love. We are celebrating in the U.S. the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's walk and March on Washington, and I'm so reminded by the revolution that meant so much to us there. And I loved what he was saying. Power without love is reckless and abusive, but love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love, implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power, correcting everything that stands against love. And for me, that's leadership. Don't shrink, don't puff up. Let's stand on our holy ground. Thank you, ladies.